The crystal chandelier glimmered over a ballroom full of laughter, perfume, and privilege. Waiters in white shirts moved like shadows between tables. And right in the middle of it all stood Keisha, a young black waitress, holding a tray of champagne flutes, smiling through exhaustion. "Excuse me." A trembling voice cut through the music. An elderly white woman in a diamond necklace had frozen mid-step, staring straight at Keisha's chest. Her pale hands began to shake. "That necklace," she whispered, her tone sharp as broken glass. "That doesn't belong to you." Every head turned. The music stopped. Keisha blinked, unsure she'd heard right. "Ma'am," she said quietly. The woman's voice rose, full of accusation. "Where did you steal that?" "That piece was my daughter's." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones lifted to record. Keisha's throat tightened as her tray trembled in her hands. "I didn't steal anything," she managed, but the words barely left her mouth. The billionaire's blue eyes filled with fury, then confusion, then something else. Her face drained of color as she stepped closer, trembling now, reaching for the pendant around Keisha's neck. What did you just say your name was?" "Keisha, ma'am." The woman staggered backward, her lips trembling. "God, it can't be." The entire ballroom went silent. The waitress stood frozen, the accused, the humiliated, while the billionaire suddenly looked like she'd seen a ghost. If this already made your blood boil, hit like and subscribe right now, because stories like this are still happening and the world needs to hear them. That night it started like every other double shift for Keisha Brown, a 22-year-old college student just trying to survive in a city that rarely showed mercy. Her tuition barely covered the basics, and rent in Boston didn't wait for anyone's dreams. So she worked morning classes, afternoon study, and nights serving the rich who never looked her in the eye. By the time she slipped into the Grand Hotel staff entrance, her feet already ached. The catering manager barked orders while crystal glasses clinked on trays. Keisha tied her apron tighter and whispered to herself, "Just get through tonight." The ballroom glittered like another planet. Chandeliers spilling light over silk gowns, violins playing, and laughter echoing like wealth had its own language. Keisha moved quietly between tables, invisible and polite, balancing glasses for people who treated her like furniture. Around her neck hung the one thing that wasn't borrowed or cheap, a simple silver necklace with a tiny pendant shaped like a book. She'd found it years ago at a thrift store in Roxbury and never took it off. Something about it felt personal, like a promise she didn't yet understand. When the billionaire grandmother, Margaret Whitmore, arrived surrounded by cameras and compliments, Keisha barely noticed. She'd seen hundreds of powerful faces. But fate had other plans that night. Because the sparkle Margaret saw across the room wasn't the diamond light above her, it was that little silver pendant catching her eye. Margaret Whitmore's heels clicked sharply against the marble floor as she moved closer, her diamond bracelet catching the light. The chatter around them died instantly. "That necklace," she said again, her voice cracking under pressure. "It belonged to my daughter. Where did you get it?" Keisha's heart pounded. "Ma'am, I didn't steal anything. I've had this for years." "Don't lie to me," Margaret snapped, her trembling hand pointing at Keisha's chest. "That pendant is one of a kind. I had it made when my daughter turned 16. Gasps spread like wildfire. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some pretending to sip champagne while secretly recording on their phones. The manager froze at the edge of the room, unsure if he should step in. Keisha tried to steady her voice. "I bought it at a thrift store in Roxbury 3 years ago." Margaret shook her head, disbelief and fear in her pale eyes. Impossible. That necklace was buried with her. The words hit like thunder. "Buried?" Keisha stared back, her voice barely a whisper. "With her?" Margaret reached out and snatched the pendant, her fingers brushing the small engraving on the back. The instant her eyes read it, her body went rigid. "To Sarah, my brightest star." She staggered backward, color draining from her face. The crowd watched as the once proud billionaire dropped her glass, the sound shattering across the floor. Keisha's tray slipped from her hands as well, the moment stretching into pure silence. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Margaret's lips trembled. "Who are you?" she whispered. "How do you have my daughter's necklace?" If this happened right in front of you, what would you do? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if you want justice as much as I do, hit subscribe. The manager quickly ushered them away from the frozen crowd, leading them into a private lounge away from the flashing cameras. Keisha's hand still trembled as she clutched the edge of a table. The chandelier's echoing hum from the ballroom faded, replaced by the soft ticking of a clock on the wall. Margaret stood by the window, her shoulders shaking. "That necklace," she whispered again. "It was buried with my daughter 27 years ago. She disappeared. We never found her." Keisha blinked, confused. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I swear I didn't know. I bought it at a thrift store in Roxbury. It was in a pile of tangled jewelry. I just thought it looked special." Margaret turned slowly, her eyes filled with something far beyond anger. It was grief. "Roxbury," she repeated, almost to herself. "That's where the police found her backpack." For the first time since the chaos began, Keisha saw not a racist woman, but a mother breaking apart in front of her. The arrogance, the wealth, the power, all of it melted into sorrow. "I thought she was dead," Margaret said, tears running down her carefully painted face. "But that necklace, if it surfaced there, maybe she wasn't gone when I thought." Keisha stepped closer, voice steady now. "Then maybe this was an accident. Maybe someone didn't want you to know what really happened." Margaret looked up, her trembling hand reaching for Keisha's. "You said you bought it 3 years ago?" "Yes." "Then help me find out where it came from." For the first time, their eyes met, not as enemy and accuser, but as two women bound by one haunting mystery neither could ignore. The next morning, the city was quiet under gray skies as Margaret's black car pulled up outside a small thrift shop in Roxbury. Keisha sat in the passenger seat, her hands clenched tight in her lap. Neither of them had slept. The night's chaos replayed in flashes. The shouting, the silence, the look on Margaret's face when she read that engraving. Inside the store, the air smelled of old fabric and dust. A woman behind the counter looked up with a kind smile. "Can I help you ladies?" Keisha spoke first. 3 years ago, I bought this necklace here. Do you happen to remember where it came from?" The woman adjusted her glasses, studying the pendant as Margaret held it out. "Oh, I remember that piece," she said softly. "Beautiful thing. We log certain donations for tax records. Give me a second." She disappeared into the back and returned with a worn binder. Her finger traced rows of handwriting until she stopped. "Here, February, 3 years ago. It came from a woman named Cheryl Evans. She runs a youth shelter in Dorchester. Donates clothes and accessories every few months." Margaret's breath caught. "A youth shelter?" The woman nodded. "Safe haven home. Helps girls aging out of foster care." Minutes later, they were back in the car, the address written on a scrap of paper between them. Margaret's voice was low. "If that necklace went from my daughter to a child in foster care," Keisha finished quietly, "then maybe your daughter's story didn't end where everyone thought it did." Margaret gripped the steering wheel tighter, her old strength flickering through sorrow. "Then we're going to find Cheryl Evans, and we're going to find out the truth." The car pulled away from the curb, two women from opposite worlds chasing a secret that had refused to stay buried. The shelter was a modest 3-story house with soft blue paint and laughter echoing from inside. A few girls were sitting on the porch, sipping juice boxes and braiding each other's hair. For a moment, Margaret hesitated, clutching her purse like a shield. Keisha placed a gentle hand on her arm. "You're not here as a billionaire tonight," she said quietly. "You're here as a mother." Inside, the warm smell of breakfast filled the air. A middle-aged black woman greeted them with tired kindness. "You must be Mrs. Whitmore and Keisha," she said. "I'm Cheryl Evans. Clarence from the thrift store called." Margaret nodded. "You donated a silver necklace 3 years ago, this one." Cheryl's eyes widened. "Oh my lord, one of my girls gave me that to donate. Said she didn't remember where she got it. She was only 16 then, in and out of homes before she came here. Her name's Tasha." "Where is she now?" Margaret asked. "At her college dorm," Cheryl said softly. "But I still have her intake file. When she first arrived, she brought a photo, a baby picture. said it was all she had left from the woman who raised her for a few years before disappearing. She handed over the old photograph. Margaret's breath hitched. It was her daughter, Sarah, holding a baby with the same silver pendant around her tiny neck. Keisha whispered, "That baby, it's her daughter." Margaret sank into a chair, trembling, her eyes flooding with tears. All these years, I buried an empty coffin. Later, when Tasha arrived, confusion turned into shock as Margaret showed her the photograph. A DNA test confirmed what no one could deny. Tasha was Sarah's child, Margaret's granddaughter. The news spread quickly, from tabloids to social feeds. The billionaire who accused a black waitress now found family through the same woman she had humiliated. And when reporters asked how she felt, Margaret answered through tears, "I judged her skin, but she restored my blood." A week later, the Whitmore mansion looked different. The chandeliers still glittered, but the air felt softer, lighter. Margaret sat beside Keisha and Tasha in the garden, sunlight warming their faces. For the first time in decades, she wasn't thinking about her reputation or the gossip columns, only the second chance life had given her. "I can't change what I said to you that night," Margaret said quietly, "but I can make sure I never stay silent again." True to her word, she created the Sarah Whitmore Foundation, funding scholarships for black students chasing dreams once denied. The first award went to Keisha Brown, the girl she had once accused, now standing proud, studying law to fight discrimination. At the ceremony, Margaret turned to her and said, "You didn't just return my family, you returned my humanity." Keisha smiled softly. "Sometimes karma doesn't destroy. Sometimes it teaches." Margaret nodded, her eyes glistening. "And sometimes," she whispered, "karma kneels." The crowd applauded as the camera lights flared, but Keisha's gaze lifted past them, to the sky, whispering a quiet prayer for the woman who never gave up seeking the truth. If you believe this should never happen again, share this now. And to my USA, UK, and Canadian viewers, your voice is power. Use it.